What's up, brothers? It's Friday. That means it's Manhood Friday or Man Up Friday. I'm excited today because we're going to dive deeper into this manhood thing and look at the past in America as far as manhood's concerned, and then look how it's kind of progressed. I think this will be real informative, give you a lot to think about. At least that's the plan. If you're new to watching this channel or my page, I'm Mike the Mentor, Mike King actually, but that's the acronym for this page, if you will. And why did I create this page? Because men, they're dying, they're living desperate or lives of desperation, silent lives of desperation. And as a result, they're taking their lives, they're committing suicide, they're turning to crime, they're turning to drugs, alcohol, addiction, pornography, anything, you name it, to soothe these wounds and to find some sort of purpose or feel good in some way. And all these false gods, all these false things, you know what? And I'm getting sick of it. So I thought about what can I do, and that's to share my story, to share some of the things that have helped me change my life, in a way to encourage other men to do the same, and just reach down and basically help my brother up, help pick him up back to his feet, and help give him purpose, help give him vision, and help him answer the higher calling that he has on his lives. So that's it. Let's get started. So today's focus of Man Up Friday is I teach from this course that I went through about 8 years ago in Chicago. Maybe it was 9 years ago when I lived in Chicago. It's called The Quest for Authentic Manhood by Robert Lewis, and it completely changed my life. I was at a breaking point. I was looking at possibly being divorced. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on in my life with my family. I was in Chicago where it was new to me. We had just moved there, and this course was a godsend, and the guys that came with it, and it was tough. I really had to do a lot of deep reflection and look within myself, and summon up a lot of courage. But I tell you what, it was worth it. So if you join me in this journey and you stick with it, and at the end we'll talk about the 5 things I expect you to get out of this, or I promise you that you will get out of this. It'll be awesome. So let's dive in here. Bear with me with this technology. I got a little presentation for you. Alright, there's that. And then we'll go here. Okay. So for this week, like I said, we're going to talk about the history of manhood in America. I call this the effortless erosion of manhood in America, where we've been and where we are now. So, right? So if we look back at America and the history of family, it all started on the farm, right? America began as an agricultural nation. And that's an important distinction to make, because men worked the family farm more often than not. They had a house and a little piece of land, and that's how they made their living. And that was important because as boys, as boys growing up, they got to watch their dad work the farm. So they learned things like hard work. They got to see how dad interacted with people on a daily basis, how dad interacted with mom. A boy spent probably almost every waking hour next to his dad, learning what it took, hands-on, on what manhood and responsibility look like that. So from the farm, we made a transition right out of that period, and we went into the Industrial Revolution. Right, the factories. And the factories came and they pulled men out of their house. Now not saying that the Industrial Revolution was necessarily a bad thing, but I think as we go through this timeline, you'll see that this erosion in manhood was, like I said, it was effortless. It just flowed from one thing to another. And when you're going through new things, you don't often realize the effects that that's going to have on society in the future, or the way things work out. So back to the Industrial Revolution, it pulled men out of their homes. So now men were leaving early in the morning. They were going to the factory to work, and it was good. They were making a higher wage, a higher living than what they could work in the farm. So there was that trade-off, because they wanted to give, right, their kids a life that they never had. And how do you do that? You try to make more money. You try to become more educated, get a better job, maybe have more things or more opportunities to provide to your kids, like schooling, and just the necessities, or the things they need to grow up, give them different opportunities to travel and whatnot. So here you have men, they're going to the factories, they're working 12, 14, 16-hour days, and then they're coming home, and the family, the kids, the wives, they got the leftovers, right? Because dad would come home tired, hungry, and then he might spend, maybe a half an hour with the kids, and then it's off to bed, and then he's off to bed, and then it's rinse and repeat the same thing the next day. And this went on for a long, long time, right? And so then the next phase that we had in this decline in manhood in America was, we had the wars, right? The Korean War, the Vietnam War, World War I, World War II. So now we have these men who were working all day and coming home, and their kids and their wife were getting the little bit of leftovers from them. Now they're being shipped off to foreign lands for months, years at a time, to fight for us, to fight for our freedom and what we thought mattered, and what was right, and the things that we have today. They gave up, a lot of them gave up their lives so that we could have what we have today, which is sad, because we take that for granted here in America. To be honest with you, it kind of pisses me off, and it makes me sad when, and you don't have to support war, that's fine, but when I see, I'm at the 4th of July and the veterans come down the road and people don't stand, or they won't clap, it's just sad to me. And it has to do more with patriotism. It's about honor, right? These people put their lives on the line for us, whether they believed in the war or not. The fact is they did it, right? So we have the wars. These men were taken out of their homes for months and years at a time. They were exposed to horrible atrocities, things that no person should have to see. I mean, they were trained to kill. And you got to think about that, right, for a second, because it's not a natural thing to kill another person, right? You have to be physically, mentally, and emotionally trained to take another person's life, right? Unless you're just born psychotic, I guess. But so these men, they had to do these things because that's what they. Some of them agreed to do that. Some of them were drafted into this situation. So here you go. They're in the wars. They're gone for months and years at a time, and now they're coming home, right? So now they're physically present in the home, but they're emotionally gone, right? Their minds are not there. They can't contribute like they could before they went off to the war. They can't express themselves like they could before they went off to the war. They're having, PSTD. They're having to deal with coming back and just the culture during that time, with people spitting on them, people screaming at them, calling them baby killers, all these things that they're having to deal with for them just doing their duty in their honor, or what they thought was their duty in their honor for their country. And now they got to piece back their life, right? And they got the raw deal out of this thing. They got screwed. And as a side effect, their family got screwed, right? Because now you have this whole generation of kids and young men growing up who know their father physically, but they don't know their father because they don't know him emotionally. They don't hardly know anything about dad. And it kind of reminds me of like my grandpa, right? Like, he was a veteran, and when I was younger, I just recall him being very angry a lot of times, and um, very, there was good things. There was discipline, but it was, a lot of like, you don't talk unless you're talked to. The things we say to guys like, don't cry, suck it up. All the things that come with this military generation that began with these wars, right? So then you have these men that are physically present in the home, which leads us to our next one, which is the women, right? These men come home and they're just not able to function, and they're not able to provide like they could before they went off to war. So what do? Does the family just roll over and die? No, the women stepped up and said, okay, you're not able to do what you were before you left, and hopefully we'll get back to that stage. But while you're trying to figure things out, I'm going to step up. And that's what women did. And they went to work, right? They went to the factories. They not only went to the factories, but they still took care of the family as well. And this spawned feminism, which at that time was a necessity, right? Because if the women didn't step up, everything was going to fall apart. But the feminism morphed, right? It became corrupted because feminism then became sameness, right? It said there's no difference between men and women, which led to men becoming extremely confused, right, about their role in the household, their role in society. They thought, what is a man? And then even more profound than that, is he necessary, right? What does that do to your psyche when a movement or society is telling you that you have little to no value? So then we have that. We have feminism and the women's movement. And then now this is what manhood morphs into. I call it the sons, right? There's a term that's very popular today. It's called extended adolescence, right? It's Peter Pan. It's Neverland. You never have to grow up. And that's what's happening in our society. Men are growing up at a much later age, where men accepted responsibility at 18, 19, 20 years old, maybe sometimes younger, 16, 17. Men aren't accepting responsibility until they're in their early to late 30s, right? They're still living at home, collecting they may go to work, collect a paycheck, but they're not paying their bills. They're not doing their laundry. They're not taking care of themselves. The focus is on themselves and doing what they want. And they're just drifting at their own comfort. And this is where we're at in society because of the things that the generations before have went through. And these are kind of the consequences and what we're paying. And I get it. I played video games. Sometimes I still play video games. But I know guys that's their whole life. It's consuming. I think I was just reading a report on that video game Fortnite, and it was saying Fortnite over in Europe is now causing divorces because guys are playing that 14, 15, 16, 18 hours a day. They're playing video games, right? I mean, and why? And there's nothing wrong with entertainment, but we got to think about this, right? Like what are we either trying to escape feeling, or what are we trying to avoid from having to feel? And those are two very important questions that I think every man has to ask himself. I have to deal with this with my own son. I mean, because that's his generation, right? You sit in front of the TV and you play video games all day, and you don't want to accept responsibility for what you have going on. Another example of that, right, is your driver's license, right? Love my son. He just turned 17, or not just turned 17. He'll be 18 actually in June, but he just got his driver's license. which took a while. When I was 16, I was raring to go, ready to get out of my house and get going and explore and, I guess, take on that responsibility and everything that comes with that little bit of freedom you get from getting your license and driving. So that's a brief history of manhood in America, where we were and where we are now and what this looks like. So let me just switch out of this a second. Come back to full facial. Alright, so here's two things I want you to think about, right, as you ponder what I just shared with you. The first one is, as we go through this course over this year, right, you just need to show up. That's all I'm asking. Show up. Well, I guess that's not all I'm asking. That's the first thing I'm asking, is you need to show up. But what do I mean by show up? What I mean by show up is be present and have the courage to ask yourself the tough questions. If you want to answer that higher calling that's on your life, and you want to be a better man, a better husband, a better father, you got to ask the tough questions. And there's going to be tough questions, but I believe in you, and I believe that you have the courage inside you to do that, right? So show up. The second thing is, you need a team. No man can do these things by themselves, right? So that's why I'm here, right? I'm mentoring you, helping you through these things. And if you ever need to talk, message me. And I'm not saying this to, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just saying this because I know what it's like to feel alone and to wish I had somebody to talk to. That's right, Steve Frody. Show up. Thank you. I've had, since I started this, a handful of guys reach out to me and want to talk about things that are going on in their lives. Right? And that's awesome. Because I believe that if I wasn't doing this, the likelihood of those guys speaking up about those situations was going to be very little. Right? They just would have held it inside. But to be able to come alongside somebody who's not going to have any judgment, and I can't tell you the things that I've heard guys say or explain or talk about, and we won't repeat those here, but to be able to come in front of somebody or talk to somebody who's not going to judge you and to be able to express and be your true self, I can't tell you how freeing that is. It's like 100 weights off your shoulder. And I've sat in that seat and said these things to other guys. And the feeling that you get afterwards is just incredible. So we're a team, me and you. If you're watching this, me and you, we're a team. So if you need me, lean on me. And I'll do the best I can to, outside of this page and the videos and stuff, to help you out. Alright, so I promised you 5 things that you're going to get from this if you continue to join me in this adventure. Alright, so the first thing that you're going to get is you will have a clear definition of manhood. For yourself, for your children, for your family, for the rest of your life. You will have this definition of manhood to lean on, which is going to help you wherever you go and whatever you do. Second thing is, you will develop new manhood language. And I can't tell you how important language is. One of the guys I met with, right, like we all have this language that we develop about ourselves that talks about like who we are, like our identity, like what, and it's a lot of times it's subconscious because we really should just tie a, yeah, Rob, thanks, working on that. Hopefully end of the year, maybe next year. We should really just tie a microphone around our neck and leave it there all day, and then at the end of the day play it back and listen to some of the things that we say to ourselves and to others out loud that we have no idea that we're saying. So met with a gentleman, right, and he's talking, and me and another person, have to keep reminding him to think about the things that he's saying, and he's having to stop and think about it and realize what he is saying to himself and the profound effect that he has. So what that looks like is right at the beginning of the conversation, he's saying these things and he has no idea. So we're bringing it to his attention, and then by the end of the conversation, he's catching himself right before he speaks those things out into the air. Our words have power. Once they're out of our mouth, we can't get them back, right? We may be able to do something about them after that, but I believe that words have enormous power over our lives. So you're going to develop a new language about yourself, about how you feel, about the vision for your future, the vision for your family. Number 3. Let's pop this up. You will make significant discoveries about yourself. As we go through this course, you're going to discover things about yourself that you never knew. If you're honest and you don't lie to yourself, I can't impress upon you how important that is. I mean, lying to yourself is a game changer, right? And what does that look like? If you feel a certain way, right? Most times as guys, right, we just push through. We probably don't even acknowledge how we feel, right? Something in our life happens. We're like, all right, game time. Get through this, right? And then we push through. And then we might reflect on it later. And that's a small percentage of guys. Most guys are just like, push through, all right, push it down, don't address it. And then just go on with what's next, right? But if you stop lying to yourself and you take a minute to really think about how you feel about certain situations and certain things in your life that are going to come up during this course, right? You're going to make it's going to be awesome. You're just going to have to trust me on that. The discoveries that you'll make about yourself will be game changing. It's going to change not only your future, but the future of your kids. Alright, the 4th thing is you will join men or other men who are pursuing a common goal. Right? It's not just you watching this. There's lots of guys watching these videos. And you're coming together in that collective towards a common goal. And the common goal is the same thing that I'm going for. It's to be a better man. It's to live up to this higher calling that I have on my life, to be a better husband, to be a better father. And that takes work. It takes purposeful work. It doesn't just happen, right? We don't just drift into it or float into it. All right, number 5, and we'll wrap this up. All right, you'll develop your own manhood plan. So I don't know if that sounds cheesy to you. I kind of thought it was cheesy when I first started in this course, but I can't tell you how important this is, right? Let me paint a picture for you, okay? If you've got kids and you're raising them, how are you raising them? What values do you want them to believe are important? When they turn 18 or whatever age it is and they go away from their home and they're out on their own and they're facing the world and the situations, what conversations do you want them to remember having with you? I'll give you a perfect example. Sex. My son was 8 years old when I first talked to him about sex. And you're probably like, man, that's crazy. That's too young. Well, I didn't plan for it to be that way. But when he's at school and I pick him up and he asks me why one of the kids is laying on top of one of the girls underneath the table at his school, well, then that prompted the beginning of this discussion. And I didn't hold back from him. I told him everything. Whether he understood all of the things is a different story. But just to plant that seed and to talk to him about that was very good. So as he's grown up through the years, we've had several talks around that, right? The importance of sex, what it means. We'll get into this later, but I'm a firm believer that you wait until you're married, and I'll discuss why. And just for full disclosure, I didn't do that, and that's one of the biggest regrets that I have in my life. But no one ever talked to me about that, ever. The main influence in my life, my grandpa, he just said, "Don't have it." Didn't tell me why. Didn't tell me talk about any repercussions, any emotions associated with it, anything. I was left on my own to figure these types of things out. Now, I had other guys come along and tell me similar things, but no one ever really went into detail around those things and how that affects your life, right? So you'll have this manhood plan so that you can have these thought out things, this thought out progression and characteristics that you want to teach your children and maybe your grandchildren, and that you're going to want to pass down through your family. It'll be a game changer. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video today. Please share it. Please like it. If you got any comments, I'm always responding as quick as I can. And tomorrow is Shout Out Saturday, so I'll be recognizing someone who's made a significant influence in my life. And then Sunday, we got Sunday Sermon, where I discuss certain things that have happened in my life. And I'll be talking about the first one of those, which is Father Wound, Part 1. So I hope you join me. Don't miss it. Thank you guys. All right. I love you, brothers. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.